This is your conscience speaking.
Hello, Conscience.
Yeah, there was some dicey moments. Now, this one you can clearly delete off of the recording after I tell you this story, but
Okay.
um,
And
uh,
welcome to another episode.
yeah, here it is, everybody.
Go ahead.
Yep. Okay. Well, yeah. Our dear listeners, you'll enjoy this next story. So, I had to get picked up. So, the people didn't know the way around downtown, and so as I'm like going, hey, I can meet you at this corner because that's you should know where this is. It's a major thoroughfare through town, and I'll just stand at the corner waiting for you. Well, I didn't realize that necessarily that particular corner is also where most prostitutes like to hang out. And so, needless to say, as I'm standing there waiting for my ride, I had some interesting conversations with some
Right.
individuals that came driving slowly
Something about
by.
tricks and
Yeah. You need a little spending money, young man? Yeah.
yes. So an
Yeah.
hour after your ride finally came.
Yeah. It's like, whoo,
Ooh.
boy. Yeah, not quite the ride I was looking for.
Learned some lessons that day, did you?
Yeah. My innocence, my childhood of innocence was
And
gone.
that's when I became a man.
I know, kidding. Yeah. I've never been called sailor before, but if you ever feel disappointed in life, just remember that I got propositioned multiple times while
That's
waiting for a ride.
I can't say that it's ever happened to me, so well done.
Yep.
Well, let me do the intro.
By all means.
You're listening to And This Is Why I Love Comics.
And welcome to another episode of And This Is Why I Love Comics. We are in the midst of a conversation that we can't even air, and that's half the fun. So, Mike's here with me. We're going to talk a little bit more, and then we might even actually talk about a book we've been reading. Hi, Mike.
Hey, good evening. As always, I always say good evening, even though people might be listening to this
Right.
during
It's
the
probably
wee hours
morning
of the
for some
morning.
of them, and
Yeah.
oh
Yeah, depending on
well,
what.
tough.
Yeah. If you're, please put this on pause until the evening comes around so you
Right.
can feel it more in the contextual
Everybody
sense.
synchronize their watches right now. And go.
Yep. Do you remember a TV show from on Fox? It was during the infancy of Fox, and it was called Parker Lewis Can't Lose,
Yes.
and they had synchronize your swatches.
Ooh.
That was their catchphrase.
Did you
And
have a
then
swatch? I had a swatch.
I had and I remember this one kid in school, they were so popular that this one kid in school had enough that he made a belt out of them. He linked them all together and made a belt.
Wow, that's a lot of swatches.
Yeah, well, he was also rail thin, so maybe it was only two.
Right?
But no, but I mean, it was the '80s, so anything that was decadent was
Right.
what you needed to do.
Yeah, he probably had two Walkmans too.
Yeah, the Sony Walkman.
Right. As we're recording this, it was Halloween a couple days ago, and I went to Tardy's Collector's Corner, which is my
Hmm,
store, and they had a Halloween sale. Everything, back issues and certain boxes were 50% off.
nice, very nice.
And I grabbed a bunch of stuff. Some of it I wouldn't have bought had it been regular priced, but that's kind of the fun of a 50% off sale.
Yep, yep. It's enough of an enticement to make you feel like, yeah, I can
Right, I can
risk it.
handle that. Yeah, and I kind of like I bought. He had a bunch of like 100-page spectaculars and 80-page giants of series that was in there, and that was kind of fun. I always liked those gianter size books, if
Yep,
gianter was a word. And so
it
I
is
picked up,
now.
it is now. So I picked up some Batman 80-page giants from the series, and that was pretty fun. Like, I don't think I've owned a Batman issue. I bought issue 193. So I don't think I had anything that early on before Batman. So that was fun. I bought a couple
Nice.
issues of that. And I collected World's Finest, and I got an early issue of that from the 60s. And that was awesome. And then there was, before Legion of Superheroes got their original title, they were guests on Superboy. And then
Oh yeah.
uh, they would have a backup story in the Superboy issues.
Hmm.
And then that series eventually became Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. And then eventually they dropped Superboy and it was just Legion of Superheroes. So I already owned all the Superboy and Legion of Superheroes, like when it changed the title, but I had never, well, I had a couple issues, but not very many from when it was just Superboy and then they were back issues or backup stories. And so they had a few there that were reasonably priced, so I bought like 6 or 7 of the Superboy title, and that was pretty fun. And then for like my entire life, I've been collecting Teen Titans, which is like the 60s
Yeah,
version.
their original sidekick gathering.
Yeah, before the new Teen Titans, which I have all those already, but the original Teen Titans series, I only had like 3 or 4 until it was last year or whatever when our guest first Matt one he
1.0.
yeah 1.0 he graciously gave me a bunch of Teen Titans issues. He gave me like issue 1 and like a great number of runs um, for that, and then I bought a few more at this sale. So I probably have half the series now, which is really cool.
That's crazy. No,
Yeah.
this was during that era when they had like that checkerboard pattern along the top.
Yeah, some of those had the checkerboard. They weren't necessarily fighting supervillains. They were fighting, the man and society and
Teen angst.
teen angst, right? And Mad Mod and all these cool little things that you don't see as much of nowadays. Yeah, and so I have a nice little collection of that now, which I never thought I'd have. So Tardies was actually pretty cool. I mean, they always are. I shouldn't say they were actually this good, but
Uh, don't.
recently, I mean,
I was gonna say, don't go too far back.
since they had new owners,
Yes, exactly.
um, the owners are pretty cool. Shout out to them for being awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, I had gone into their shop a couple of times now when I get back up to the greater Grand Rapids area, and I've gone into there. I picked up a few Masters Universe items that they have, straggling pieces here or there. But as far as it goes, yeah, I mean, crazy difference. It's almost night and day, and in some cases, it's literal because I don't know what happened beforehand, but it seems brighter in there. Like they actually turned on lights. They
Yeah,
may be paying for the electric bill this time as opposed to the old man that was there beforehand.
right. Yeah, they don't. I mean, it's not a big space, but they cram it full of greatness, and
Yeah, that they do.
they they actually like talking to people as they come in and stuff. It's a remarkable that when you're friendly with your customers,
It's
the
such a rare
customers actually want to
concept.
come back. It's isn't it that's crazy.
Did we already hit up the best story we've ever had at that place?
No, I haven't heard your. Might have heard it already, but
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is still the best. So the crotchety of old men that we are currently aspiring to be ourselves now. But at the time, this comic shop owner at the shop, and we were walking around just looking at ourselves through the various back issues and looking at the new issues that were coming out. And this kid who must have been, I think at the time, I may have been in like early high school, and my brother was probably late high school. And this kid must have been in like middle school or something like that. And we went in there. The kid was just kind of looking through some like the back issues, just kind of flipping through, and the owner of the store walks up to the kid and is like, "Can I help you find anything?" And the kid's like, "Oh no, I'm just looking." And the owner of the store shoves him aside and says, "Then get out of my way. I'm putting things away." and just shoves the kid, just like woof. And it's like, wow, this might have been acceptable in like the 50s when you could, spank other people's kids,
Right.
but this was, mid 80s, late 80s. And it was just like, wow. I mean, the kid just said, okay. And he walked out and we walked out too. And I don't think we went back
This isn't a
after that.
library. I've heard that one before.
Yeah, that's another classic. Boy, that dude just knew how to warm up the audience. Knowing that these things were not essential. No one has ever said in their life that it's like, I would have lived another day if I had my fair share of comic books, or anything like that. It doesn't prolong life. There's no FDA notices saying like, read 3 comics a day to help, fight against cancer or anything like that. It's just so to treat clients like that just clearly shows that he had zero understanding of how to continue a customer base, but somehow he eked it out for decades.
Right. Yeah. He was the only store in town for a while, so he could do that. But
True.
once the competition started, people had other ways to buy their comics. So it's like, no thanks. I don't.
Yeah.
I'd rather go elsewhere. I'd rather go 20 more miles outside my way and buy comics somewhere cooler.
There's another one, and it's called, I think, The Outer Limits.
Yeah.
And that one, it's still open. And inevitably, if I ever get over that way, I'll stop in. And the weird thing is that the guy still remembers me. And I haven't lived in Grand Rapids in nearly 20 something years. And I
Yeah.
go in there maybe once every 5 years to this place. And it's like, huh. And it's like, hey, good to see you again. And I'm thinking, like, either one, he's legitimately remembering me, or he just says that to anybody that comes in.
Right.
And it's like, oh, but, I think some of it may be legit. I think there is something where he, because we did talk about games and we talked about all this stuff at one point, and I got to know him fairly well at one point just before moving,
Yeah.
obviously.
I call that the Franchesco effect.
Yeah, yeah. Even if you haven't seen the guy in ages, it's still like,
Yep.
oh yeah.
But when I do see him, he thinks I'm you.
And I'm fine with that.
We
But let me,
didn't say that story on the con game. We'll have to do that on the second one with Francesco.
yeah, let me tell you this one. So Francesco, super nice guy, super, he has a really good art style and so forth. And I think after that comic thing, I got onto a mailing list. Maybe the second time I met Francesco, I got into a mailing list. And he had sent something to my parents' home, and I had moved away at the time. And coming back to, visit my parents were like, "Oh, here's some mail for you." And right on the top of it was a postcard from this Francesco promoting his latest publication.
Was it Stacy X?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. His near pornographic comic book. And it's like, how long has this been sitting at my parents' home?
Yeah.
And them thinking like, what is he into? What is he looking up? What is this stuff?
You said you got a
And
job in the industry. I didn't know it was this.
yes. And I'm like going, oh, you got to be kidding me. I mean, really?
Those prostitute contacts you made.
Calling back to that story, yes. Yeah. That single and it was sitting right on the top. So it was kind of like, care to explain?
Right,
That
yeah.
kind of a moment. It's like,
Nope.
nope, 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 nope.
I don't know this guy. Never heard of him.
The comic shops came and went, in Grand Rapids, because the one shop that we would go to, and it was like, I think ultimately it was my favorite, was the Book Stop.
Yep, that was my
And
favorite. Too.
then he went into the T-shirt business, but he kept the name Book Stop. And then he finally closed up all the books and the comics and everything, and just went solely as a T-shirt place, but kept the name the Book Stop.
Yeah,
And
his brother lives down the street from me.
oh really?
Because he had a garage sale, like 2 blocks down from me. He had a garage sale, and he had boxes of comics, and I bought some comics from at the garage sale. and they were all labeled Book Stop. So I said, "You wouldn't by a chance have owned the Book Stop or whatever?" And he said, "No, I was partial owner. That was my brother who ran it or something like that." So I was like, "Oh, cool." And I've kept waiting for him to have another one.
His comic shop was called Between the Covers.
Right?
You're
Yeah,
like, where are you going? Between the covers.
between the covers. Wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly.
We did have a title that we were talking about today.
That's
And
very true.
you know what? I realized I thought that I had every issue, only to realize I only had the first 2 years, and then it went on for another year after that. So now I'm searching on eBay, going, "Oh, I gotta get the rest."
The completist syndrome
Yeah,
is
right. I have 1 through
coming in
24,
full.
but it went to 36 issues.
Yeah, but Alan Moore, I think he stopped at 22
Oh,
or
really?
something like that. So it went to, I think 'cause this is when DC, like he had sold the entirety of Wildstorm to DC, and they were like, okay, we're going to keep our hands off. And then Jim Lee ultimately became part of the DC management system. And then that's when Alan Moore says, like, hey, I told you I was never going to work for DC. Now this is all part of DC, and DC's want to get their hands on this. And
Right.
so I think he just walked away from it all.
Yeah, he's had bad luck with his dealings.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily bad luck or if it's just, there's a I think Mike Mignola said it best at one comic convention. It's like you look at these things as your kids, and who do you want your kids to play with? And this was Mignola talking about like that. It was at the onset of Image, and somebody asked him like, "Why aren't you part of the Image comics? Oh, those are hot creators." And he's like, "Yeah, I like to think that I like to think of my ideas as like my kids, and I just want them to hang out with the good kids." And I think that's kind of where Alan Moore's at too. It's like, yeah, I want them to hang out with the good publishers. I want them to be, where they're not going to be twisted and maligned and contorted. But then again, I mean, he's also got to pay some bills. So I've seen him like, he did a run on Spawn. He did a run on Wildcats. He did a run on, I mean, Alan Moore, that is,
Right.
had
I
done
was gonna
quite
say
a
Mike
bit of
Mignola
stuff.
did Wildcats.
No.
But yeah, we're talking about Tom Strong from America's Best Comics, and then
Yep.
later DC, like you said, bought them or owned them
It
through
just got
Wildstorm.
rolled in,
Yeah.
through Wildstorm. Yeah, because this was all part of Jim Lee. Hey, it's Jim Lee.
It's Jim Lee.
Jim Lee's imprint within Image Comics, and then kind of spread off on its own to a slight degree. And then through that, Jim Lee basically offered up an option for Alan Moore to say, okay, you can create your own comic universe and do whatever you want, and we'll call it ABC, America's Best Comics. And, that's what he did. He had 4 or 5 titles initially,
Yeah.
all penned by him. Promethea, Tom Strong, and then there was that Precinct 10 or something like that. I can't remember what the other ones were. And he had some amalgam Tomorrow stories or something like that too.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Where it had a little bit of everybody.
so there was quite a few titles that were coming out, and I was buying them all.
Yeah, this was 1999. The first issue came out.
It's like a
June-
party.
June of 1999.
Out of all the titles, I think this is the one that resonated the most with me. The anthology book was great because it had some amazing artwork by top creators that were just like clamoring to have some sort of connection to this new imprint. Promethea, yeah, that was almost too ethereal.
Yeah, it was like a magical fairy tale kind of thing.
Yeah, it kind of stranger and stranger as it went along, and it's like, while it was great and it was well written and the pacing was good, I couldn't find the connecting, points to it like I could with this one.
Yeah, I only read the first issue of Promethea, and I'm like you. It's like, I know it's good. I'm not connecting to it. Tom Strong's more of a sci-fi techie hero, and we'll get into that. We're going to talk about the first 6 issues, I think, and I mean, if we only get through 5, that's okay too. We plan on doing a couple of these Tom Strong ones, if they continue to be worthy. And I don't know about you, Mike, but
What?
This is my first reread in quite a long time, probably since I bought
Yes.
them. I knew I liked them when I first read them. I didn't know how much I liked them until I reread them. And my overall impression is Alan Moore is a genius, and he sets things up in this first issue where we had talked about before how when they aged Jonathan Kent immediately, they took away some of the history, the potential history of the character, so that you couldn't say, "Oh, he encountered this person this year or this person this year." Like you're suddenly aged this character, so you've wiped out some potential stories. Where in Tom Strong, he sets up the first issue how it's his origin issue, and it's a full setup issue. But Alan Moore set it up in a way where it spanned 100 years or so. He would jump around to different parts of the timeline, and he made it so that in future issues you could jump around to any of that 100 years and tell a quality story, background story, a side story, and it would make sense in the full line timeline. That's genius.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually going to bring up that point as well. It's like it gives you so much material to play with. It's the ultimate sandbox, because all the stuff that happened between the turn of the century of the 20th century to the 21st century, theoretically could all be told with this character, and and anything in between. I mean, most of the stories take place in modern times, meaning the 1999 to 2000. But there's a lot of like, oh well, he fought during World War II, and he also appeared, in other eras as well, and you can go back and tell those stories. So it gave, as a writer and it gave as an artist, opportunities for them to just tackle whatever story they wanted to. It wasn't like they were confined by, to the Jonathan Kent aspect of it being like, well, we lost all those years, so you can only tell what's happening right now. And that's it. You can't have a mystery backstory to him. You can't have anything that's like, what happened that is lingering in his past that might show up to haunt him in his current time.
Right.
And this setup right out of the gates gave you that sense. And I love the fact that it's two things happened that made this thing the best out of all the America's best. And one of them was the fact that this is a comic full of hope and optimism, because this is when you think of Alan Moore, you think of The Watchmen, you think of V for Vendetta, you're thinking of these grim, dark, The Killing Joke. Things are kind of gritty. This thing is crazy full of optimism. It's just like, yeah, there's some troubles and trying times, but he's the hero who will pull through. And then the other aspect of it is it brings back and it shows that the classic characters, the Doc Savage Man of Bronze, the Shadow, the Spider, all those characters have validity if it's done and handled by the right person, and they can be brought into current times. When you see the Zack Snyder saying like Superman is no longer relevant, or Batman needs to be on a killing spree in order to make him gritty, you're losing sight of what potential could be there. You're just going to the lowest common denominator and just saying like, okay, this is it. But if handled by the right writer and the right imagination, those characters, Superman being the Boy Scout, could play off amazingly well. I mean, Captain America, for the most part, in the MCU has. And you look at the Superman and how dour he is in the Zack Snyder, it's just because they felt like, oh, we can't have Superman exist in the way he is in the comics in these movies. And it's like, you can. And this is where Alan Moore, because of his, to your point, being a genius, and rightly so, is able to come in and just say, here's all these characters that were very viable in the, the 30s, the pre superhero era, are just as valid today if done right. And that's what he was doing here in this title. It was just, so much of it was playing off of those classic characters and those tropes that were established way back then and brought them into modern times and said, look at what you can do now.
Right, they still work with the proper writer, you're right. And the fact that Tom Strong isn't a household name is a shame because this title deserves a lot more than it has gotten, and it's too bad that publisher has not given more recognition for this character, this storyline, the possibilities in this. It's just some great storytelling. Let alone the art is incredible. You know, we've liked a lot of the artists that we've talked about more than some of the writers we've talked about. For the most part, Chris Sprouse, and then there's guest artists too, and they're all great as well. But Chris Sprouse handles the main story for this Tom Strong and his artwork. And I've always been a Chris Sprouse fan when he did some Legion stuff. Every time he touches the page, I love it. His Tom Strong stuff is probably his best stuff that I've seen in a long line of great stuff. So, I mean, he's never bad. Just what the story asks for. It's so detailed in some spots, and then in other spots it's very simple. You know, he does exactly what needs to be done. Like when he does full splash pages of the main characters, of Tom Strong's family and stuff like that. They're gorgeously rendered. They're each like individually with an individual look and style. You can tell he really put his heart into this story.
He's one of the artists that I regret not getting that sketchbook that he had done and was selling. I've seen great artists, but his just shows you the level of detail and absolute professionalism that Chris Sprouse brings is I've never seen anybody else do a sketchbook where his sketchbook included him just drawing tennis shoes, and just like one tennis shoe was flopped over on its side, and that was it. That was like a page of him just drawing tennis shoes. And I'm thinking like, dang, who draws tennis shoes? It's usually people trying to figure out how to draw an expression on a face or draw hands. But he was like just learning, he was doing detailed reference drawings for tennis shoes. And I thought, this guy is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And, I picked up, pretty much anything that I could that had his artwork on it. Even the sad things that are Rob Liefeld's New Men that he had, and not to be confused with the Newman of the Seinfeld episodes, but this is the
Or
new
the Newman
men.
of Tom Strong.
Yeah, the pneumatic. But this one, it's a terrible title. It's a horrible book, but it had Chris Sprouse's artwork on it, and I was just like, I had to get it. He did the cover, he did the interiors, and as a result, I had to buy it. Right. But mercifully, the pairing of these two predates the America's Best Comics. They both had a great run on Rob Liefeld, of all things, Rob Liefeld's Supreme. And it took that from being one of the worst Superman knockoffs, where it was like, what would happen if Superman was just mean and would do whatever he wanted to do? And that was a one sentence, and that's what the character was just one sentence. Alan Moore, and with some less than stellar artists at the onset, helped rebuild the Supreme character into something that was legitimately amazing. And then about the second, or basically the last 2/3 of his run, Chris Sprouse had stepped in, and it was a regular writer.
Wait, you're telling me there's Chris Sprouse Supreme issues that I don't have?
Yes. Honestly, I mean, that...
Dear eBay.
Yep. Take more of my money. But yeah, honestly, that was a phenomenal, absolutely brilliant run. Alan Moore revamped everything that was in the Rob Liefeld universe, because Liefeld at that point had been booted out of Image and had done, where did he go? It was Awesome Entertainment for a little bit, and it was Arcade Comics for a little bit, and then he had Maximum Press. I think it was under that for a little bit. That dude just couldn't find enough funding to make it happen, but it was because it was still Alan Moore I went all over. I spent years trying to gather all those floppy individual issues
Huh. Well,
for that run.
I will imagine. I'm not a future teller, but I would bet in the next 6 months I also have some of those issues in my hand. Um, it might not be all of them, but looking it up, Chris Sprouse, who is around our age, so he would fit on this podcast.
Very
Yeah,
true.
if I can get a hold of him later. Um,
Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. He won 2 Eisner Awards for his work on Tom Strong, so he at least was
Fantastic.
recognized for the great job.
The his art is reminiscent of two artists that I enjoy too, and that is one is Paul Smith during his X-Men run. How that dude was very very thin line. The line work was reminiscent of Paul Smith, where it had roundness to it, an economy of the line. And then the other is Alex Toth, who I think I talked about in a previous recording, but where that dude was completely minimalistic in his artwork. But if anything can be said about Chris Sprouse, it's the two things is that amazingly consistent and can draw anything. And I've never come across something where I looked at it going like, what is that supposed to, oh, that's supposed to be this. Okay, I get it. Because some people can draw dense jungle foliage. Some people can draw buildings. Some people can draw, technology, and other people can draw animals. But this guy could draw literally anything. And like I said, that single page in that sketchbook of just tennis shoes, it threw me off. Like, holy crap, this is a guy who really loves to draw, and it's evident.
Yeah.
And he'll draw anything so that he can become better at it.
Yeah, it looks like his last book work was in Black Panther Volume 6, issues 5 to 8. And that was in 2017. So he hasn't done anything
Wow.
else. He also did Thor's plural 1 through 4, and that was 2016. But that was looks like there's a 2018. He did a Captain America Annual #1. So he's done work recently at least. He did Supreme 50, 52, 53 through 56.
Yeah, phenomenal stuff. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Obviously, Alan Moore took that and saw the Superman character. It was the original inspiration, but it was the Golden Age Superman. And if you have any interest in the Golden Age Superman and what it could be done to continue that character in the modern age, look at Supreme. It was, oh crap. I mean, every issue was another one where I was like, oh, I will sum it up by the one moment in comics that I honestly was stunned by. And I've not been stunned by comics in really in any case
In many
whatsoever.
years.
I got a jaded and hardened heart,
Not
but this
since
one moved
Jason
me
Todd died by vote.
by vote. Yeah, that gimmick. No, but there was something that was done in a backstory, or like one of the tropes that Alan Moore likes to do, and having these like guest artists come in to do secondary or lost tales. In the case of Tom Strong, lost tales will have like a flashback to a past time frame. Well, in Supreme, he did that as well. And Rick Veitch, I think is the pronunciation of the guy's name. He did the old comics that like the Golden Age era of Supreme in these stories, and he met up with an equivalent of the Legion of Superheroes. And as he was, Kid Supreme, I believe, when he was in his teenagers, like Superboy.
Yeah.
And it shows him waving, like they go through this time stairwell, and he looks up and he sees this older version of Supreme up several flights up in this stairwell, and he waves and it's like, hey, is that what I'm going to look like when I get older? And the Legion kids kind of say like, yeah, that's you in the future. And it's like, okay. And then like 3 issues later, there is a scene in the comics where the regular Supreme goes in that same stairwells, looks down and sees this kid waving up at him. And it's like, oh, and it's just like that payoff.
Yeah.
And it didn't further the story, but it just showed you that attention to detail, that attention and the importance of this medium to both, Alan Moore and the artists at that time, because I think it may have been Ian Churchill that might have been doing the artwork at that time
Okay.
for Supreme. It wasn't bad art. I mean, it was bad at the onset, but when Chris Sprouse took over, then it was like, holy crap, this is absolutely unstoppable as far as a comic. And I think it did win some Eisners. Supreme won some Eisner awards for like best title or revamp or fixing repair job. And then unfortunately, it ended abruptly. That run on Supreme ended abruptly because Liefeld ran out of cash and couldn't pay anybody to do it. So he had Alan Moore's scripts, but no way to publish them. And then ultimately and ironically, Eric Larson of all people picked up where it got left off and did the last couple of using Alan Moore's script, but Eric Larson doing the art. It wasn't bad. It wasn't, it was like decades later, basically, is what it boiled down to. It's like he picks up a storyline from a couple decades prior.
Right.
And then as soon as it was done with the Alan Moore thing, Larson did it, and then it was just another Savage Dragon, kind of like, oh, let's see how gruesome and grisly and whatever he wanted to do with the character he did. So it's kind of like, it lost its way almost immediately.
Looking through the first issue, he tells the tale as if you just got the issue yourself, and you're one of the, what do they call the strongmen of America, or
Yep.
He tells the origin of Tom Strong, and it's mostly about his parents. And his dad was a genius. They go to this island. Tom Strong gets born, and they keep flashing back to current times where Tom Strong, his home city is Millennium City, and you see kind of how the world is different. People are riding Zeppelins and cable cars. You see how Tom was bred kind of in this tank or something that gave him more strength, and it's
Pseudoscience.
right, pseudoscience, which is great because you don't have to really use a true scientific method to explain it, but like it's almost mad science in a way, fictional science to explain this hero, and it makes perfect sense in the story. Like, I didn't go, oh yeah, that's never gonna happen, because it's a comic book for one, and then two, it's just kind of neat science. Like, there's these gadgets, and Tom Strong is, you can tell he's smart and he's a builder, and he's this mythical hero that ages very slowly because of some root that his dad had found on the island, or his mom.
Yeah, the tribal people of the island introduced them to it.
Yeah, and it's all spanning, like he's 99 years old when the story in the current time, but they tell this tale.
But he looks as if he's in his 40s.
Right, yeah, he's got a little gray on the side. He's about our age, except he's slightly better in shape than me.
Yeah.
Just a little.
I've never seen myself in this proportions, no.
But
never.
And then even by the end of the first issue, you get to see who Alan Moore wants you to recognize as his family, or here's the characters I'm going to be telling stories about. And it's got his wife, daughter, and the pneumatic man, and Tom Strong has made this ape with super intelligence, which apes sell. We've learned that.
DC built a lot of characters around the apes.
Yeah, apes on the cover sells more covers. It's a great setup issue. I really think Alan Moore and this creation of Tom Strong, it was way ahead of its time.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a comic of any time.
Right.
Whenever this came out,
archetypal, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like you compared him to the Shadow and
Doc Savage.
Doc Savage, definitely. It's like an immortal. Like
Tarzan.
You could read this at any period of your life and get something out of it. You could place this character in any time period and have him excel or make it a great story. Like it would just make sense at any time period because this character is timeless.
Exactly.
And that's so hard to do. I never thought this character, even though I liked the story and I've I read it when it first came out, but I had no memory of how it came about. And now in my 50th year, I just think Tom Strong really is the character that I want to read more about, and I'm angry at the comic universe that it's not producing more Tom Strong stories. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly. Exactly. It's so well crafted. It's so well thought through that, there isn't anything where you feel like, oh, that's a dead end character or that's not going to work. Or because even in this very first issue, how much do they set up? So, like, if this little Timmy Turbo kid that they introduce as kind of like the means in which you are introduced to Tom Strong is through a kid who joins, to your point, he joins the Strongmen of America and winds up, if you look, even those pages have the old newsprint coloration. They have the border all the way around. The actual page, the artwork, it doesn't bleed off the edges. But then when he actually reads the comic, and anything that has like truly Tom Strong and not in a flashback, but current, or the story itself that's outside of this Timmy Turbo character, then it's full bleed. But then as soon as it goes back to being kind of like an old timey comic where, they couldn't go all the way off the edges of the page and the colors are very flat. And I mean, it's just, they give it so that this is such a well crafted and well presented. And you can see where conflicts could come up in your head. Oh, what's going to happen next? And that is something that you don't see in comics at all anymore. You have almost like, unless it's a gimmick of like, hey, guess who just came out in this comic? Or, hey, guess who's going to die in this issue? Or, hey, we've got a new villain that we're going to introduce, and this is going to be the Superman killer. There's nothing, everything's out there for shock value and not good storytelling. And this, in its single first issue, was an amazing setup, amazingly well done. This is gushing over this storyline, but
Yeah, earlier
it's
you
really
said
good.
it was hard to talk about Wonder Woman because we liked it so much. And here we are gushing over Tom Strong because we liked it so much. And there's really a lot to say about this. I mean, I love George Perez, of course, and Wonder Woman. Can I compare Alan Moore's writing to Grant Morrison? Am I allowed to do that? Because in
Yeah.
a way, when I was reading Final Crisis, and I said this in the episode, I was excited to turn the page because I never knew what Grant was going to throw in. And I felt the same way reading this. That doesn't happen as much anymore with old man cynical me. It's just was a page turner. The art, I knew the art was going to be good on the next page. I knew the story was going to be worth it. The dialogue is crisp and it's not wasted, and that's amazing to feel at age 50, having read comics most of my life.
There was two things that I liked about him that it's hard to find in current comics. Is that one, something actually happened in that issue, something of consequence. Again, going back to Bendis, there was
Shut your mouth.
there's so much where it's like he takes a whole story arc that's like 5 issues long, but it really could have been condensed into one issue, but it just got dragged and belabored and bloated into 5 issues. But this is like so dense. There was so much going on, but you didn't feel overwhelmed. It was so well paced, and each of these issues that we read were self-contained issues, but they gave you like, here's the cover of the next issue to tease you. And there was not necessarily continuity, but there was enough that there was like, you can see that there's world building in these first few issues to kind of like develop the characters some more, and you can see where things are going to happen. There was things that alluded to things that weren't going to happen even for several more issues down the road, because there's a reference already to some of the other characters. I don't think they show up until like issue, when does like Tom Strange show up?
Yeah, like issue 10 or something. But
Yeah, but there's
or
the
7 or something.
gallery in, I think, issue 5.
Yeah,
Yeah, and who's this character? What is,
from day one, page one, because they
exactly.
mentioned villains and all this stuff, and again, the history of Tom Strong was stretched out over 99 years. So he mentions, oh, I fought him here in this year, and then here in this year, and you have you just see all these potential stories laid out
Exactly.
in two sentences that I can't wait to read about this, or how did he beat him in this, you know?
Yeah, and that's what works out so well in this whole series. In the like, to your point, I think I stopped getting it as soon as Alan Moore stopped writing it. Not that the stories were bad or anything, but there was that care and that craft that went into it. The writing is just phenomenal. This is to give you the level of my appreciation of this book when it came out. I remember bringing it up when I visited my parents back in Grand Rapids, and I actually had my dad read the first issue.
Oh, okay.
If that tells you, like, I had never shared any of my comics, any of that stuff with my dad. He knew I got comics, and he had comics, and he drew comics for us, just family comics, as we were growing up. But it was like comics. I know who these characters are, the Batmans and the Supermans and so forth. But he was never getting comics. He would drop us off at the comic shop, but he wasn't getting comics. But this was the only time I think I ever said, "You got to read this comic," and it was with Tom Strong #1. And if that tells you my adoration of this book, especially when it came out,
Right.
and how much of it had an impact, is like, holy crap, because it was, because my dad grew up in that era when the pulp characters and when they were on the phasing them out to a degree, and the superheroes were replacing them. But he still would talk about, like, oh yeah, the Phantom, and oh, Tarzan, I love Tarzan. And it's like, this is somebody who's taking those tropes, those classic elements, and putting them into today's publication. And I wouldn't say trying to update them for today, because they didn't need to be updated. They just need to be well written. And it was just like, this is what Tom Strong was. And beautiful artwork by Chris Sprouse didn't hurt at all. It made it
Right.
even
Yeah.
easier to go through. Most of the stuff we've talked about on this podcast, I've been able to read digitally. This one I had to actually grab out the old floppy issues and flip through the pages. And I forgot how many ads there were even
Right.
back then.
You're like, what?
They still
What are
had
these
it.
strange pages?
I know nowadays there isn't any. There isn't zero ads unless it's something to promote another comic in the same publication, publisher.
And that's
But
such
like,
a
yeah,
loss. I mean, to me, that comics, the ads were a part of that. And,
yeah, that experience.
back in my day, it's so strange that new readers now will never experience until they
No,
get into back issues how great the ads were. And
yeah.
not even that they were great ads, but I mean, they were just part of the whole experience.
Well, how many issues had the Jack Davis? I think Jack Davis did the art, but I couldn't tell. Maybe I'm trying to remember it now. But it was for Spalding basketballs, and it had a basketball player named Rick Barry. Is that the right name? It was on the back cover almost for a year of every like Marvel publication, was Dr. J and this guy named Rick Barry, I think, and they were talking about Spalding basketballs. And it's like, I will always associate Spalding with that particular issue.
Yeah, I just remember like Starburst,
Bubblicious.
Bubblicious, the Dungeons and Dragons ones by
Oh
Bill
yeah,
Willingham.
yeah.
Did
Fables
those.
fame.
The Hostess Twinkies.
Oh man, how many of those things? Yeah, I'm looking it up. It's Spalding, called Spalding Presents Street Ball.
Yeah, I hadn't realized until you mentioned your dad. I didn't introduce my dad to Tom Strong, but he was a big Tarzan fan and John Carter of Mars and stuff like that. So
Yep.
yeah, that definitely that generation and the pulp heroes, the Shadow, definitely he loved that kind of stuff, and he would have loved Tom Strong too. Yeah, I'd never thought about showing him comics. He did collect as a kid. He has a bunch of stories, but of course back then you would just trade them in and just be done with them. So he never had
Yeah.
a collection. He would just read them and then get the next one and trade it in and stuff like that. But that's what makes them valuable nowadays.
Yep, because they were just throwaway. Yeah, because that was something that was distinctly, they were traded. And as soon as you were done reading them, you handed them off. And here's where one of the ironic things was that my dad would talk about was that comics now you look at a back issue and they up the price instantly because it's a back issue. But at the time, my dad would say he would go to the drugstore or whatever it was in town, and new comics were a full dime. It cost you a full dime to buy a comic. But if they still had a copy from the previous month, they put that on the rack behind it, and that was a nickel.
Right.
And you're like, holy crap, I bet you if you had any of those issues, you could retire on it.
Right. Yeah.
Just by the sale of one of those things. And yeah, they were actually trying to just unload them as soon as they could. It's like, boom, here, get this off our shelves. We're going to sell it for half price.
Yeah. It's so crazy to think about back then what the environment was and how we would all cringe now knowing that my dad had an early issue of Batman and then didn't have it because he just traded it in and
Yep.
got a soda instead. You know, it's just, oh,
Traded, and that was at the time traded up.
right. Yeah. So crazy. Yeah. Tom Strong is making us thinking about the early 40s and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the validity of those characters, and what makes it, and it's both great and frustrating, shows how bad the comic industry is by the fact that no one can match that. No one else can make those characters valid. It's like, why somebody taking John Carter and doing something amazing, or the Shadow, or Doc Savage?
Right.
Because I mean, this is almost an exact analog of Doc Savage.
Well, certainly they've had comic attempts in the past. I mean, you and I both collected The Shadow, Howard Schenken.
Yep, Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yeah,
This-
Doc Savage
Sienkiewicz.
had a run. But,
I think every publisher has it.
right.
Because I
So
remember there's a giant size from Marvel.
people try to do those, and I know Marvel has done a John Carter series. I picked up a couple of them.
Yeah, Gil Kane did the artwork, if I remember
Yeah.
right.
So I
At
mean,
least on
and
the
some of it
covers.
is good in quality. You just don't see any attempt in that I know of in the decade. I'm trying to think when the newer John Carter stuff came out that Marvel did, but it's not the same, and I don't know why they can't be handled. It must be the audience really could care less about them, really. Otherwise, Tom Strong would be more popular. All these characters would be in the mainstream
True.
more if the audience wanted them.
Yeah, and that's, I think, another thing where it's just marketing. Where were these things being promoted, and because of it being only available at direct market, you weren't buying comics at a 7-Eleven. You weren't buying comics at even a Walmart, or a bookstore. You can only buy comics at a direct sales, and it's like, who's going into the comic shops? No one, unless you already were indoctrinated as a young kid. You weren't going to just walk into a comic shop. So as a result, your audience became more and more and more limited.
Yeah, isn't it weird that I can picture where the comic rack is in the 7-Eleven that I would ride my bike up to, and I
Town
can
and Country?
picture, yeah, that too, and I can picture where in the Meijer, the grocery store where we live, where that comic rack was, and in this Meijer and in that Meijer, I know exactly
Yeah.
where I bought
Big
them.
spinner rack.
Right. And I wish I had a spinner rack, but it's just that memory is all a part of collecting for me. Where current readers, it's I drove to the comic store and I went in and there's comics everywhere. That's their image of it, and it's as valid. It's as cool.
Yes.
As mine. It's just so different. Very, very neat in one way because that feeling. I know how they feel discovering new books and stuff like that. It's just a different atmosphere, and I'm sure that goes throughout history of different people discovering things that were popular at the time and weren't popular now or handled differently. It's just a part of getting old, I guess, but I loved riding my bike to 7-Eleven and wondering what was on the rack
Yep.
and I'll get this Justice League and this Legion And oh, there's
Yeah.
the Avengers, and great, the next issue of X-Men is actually here, and it's not gonna skip a month, because I didn't have a schedule back then of
Yeah.
when each book.
These
I
things come
either
out every month?
Right.
Didn't know that.
I got a quarter in my pocket. I got to go get a comic, and
Yep.
then this one will have to wait till next time. I hope it's still here because I don't have enough. I have to pick and choose which comic I'm going to get, and that's just all part of collecting. That was fun for me.
It's the equivalent of the difference between finding buried treasure and being given $1. It's like if you're given $1 and it's like, here you go. And then it's like, oh, thanks. That was, the effort isn't there. But finding buried treasure is like, oh, I stumbled across it and I just happened to find it. And that was what it was like back in the day when we went to the comic, going to 7-Eleven or whatever store was nearby that carried comics. You're like, oh, there's comics over here. Look at this. And then you'd see what they had in their spinner rack for you to pick up at that time. Whereas now it's like you go to the comic shop and you're like, yeah, they got 10 copies of that particular issue. And so you're hard pressed to say like, oh, I can't find, or I'm not able to find it.
Yeah. Now it's just variant covers you can't find or something.
Oh, yeah. Gimmicks. Everything's a gimmick.
And I don't
It's
mind
like,
variant covers, but I'm not going to buy an extra variant. Like if the cool art Mike Aldred did a variant of this issue and I see it and I like it better than the original, sure, I'll buy the variant, but I'm not going to go then also buy the regular cover. That it's one and done for me. I'm not
one
I don't,
or the other.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not I'm going to buy every variant copy.
Yeah, I'm
No.
a absolute Masters of the Universe nut. My studio is complete wall to wall Masters of the Universe going back to the 80s. And when they were coming out with the Masters of the Universe comics, DC at the time was doing them. Darwin Cook did an alternative cover. It was like a Darwin Cook month, and he did covers for everybody. And I was like, holy crap. I think I did wind up buying 2 of those because I bought the original and then I stumbled across the Darwin Cook version. I was
Darwin
like,
cooks
oh,
differently though. I would buy
yeah,
anything he did cover wise. Like
yeah, phenomenal.
even going through back issues, if I see a Darwin Cook cover, I'm gonna get it.
Yeah, phenomenal artist.
Yeah, we need to do New Frontier. Like that should be.
That was those and the Parker novels. I don't know if you ever read any of those
I have
that
not.
he had done. Oh my gosh,
But I
he
need
did
to.
several of the Parker, which is the Richard Stark, Donald Westlake's pseudonym for writing grim anti-hero Parker. Look up Parker by Darwin Cook and you will, that's a page turner, and there's not a whole lot of words. Phenomenal art, great heist.
Little boy, go back where you came from. Oh, I have to put you back where you came from. Little boy, go back where you came from. Oh, I have to put you back. Little boy, go back where you came from. Oh, I have to put you back where you came from.
Tom Strong, Alan Moore's this whole America's Best Comics. I think it truly does live up to the America's Best Comics because
It does.
it takes the heroics and it takes all those constructs of it and then opens it up to such a world that it could be anything in these stories because he introduces this main villain right out of the gates, and you're just anticipating this Savine character to be kind of a major player, his Moriarty, if you would.
Right. I love
And-
how they never show, like, he goes out of his way to not show his face very often.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is done, and I wonder if that's a future storyline or whatever. Like, they do show it once in a while, but a lot of it is his head's chopped off, or he's speaking off panel, and it just adds to the mystery, which I really question why they do it, but I love that they do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've only talked about issue 1, issue 2 of Tom Strong, and I've read now the first 6 issues, and they're all great. Issue 2 introduces the Modular Man, who's mentioned in issue 1, I believe, and it's just a great villain. Sometimes doesn't have to be too technical. Like this Modular Man is simply a replicating computer robot who then thinks it can take over the world. And then the more of them, the more intelligent it is because it's a network of consciousness. Right away I wondered, how is he going to stop this? And Alan Moore comes up with a great way not have a typical fight, but have more of a philosophical debate. And it's just crafted really well. And I almost don't want to spoil the book in case listeners want to go and read it. I don't want to have told you how it's done. Like in the other reviews, I've had no problems whatsoever revealing how the Infinity Gauntlet was taken and how Thanos was stopped, or in Final Crisis, what they did to defeat Darkseid. But I almost don't want to get too detailed in this Tom Strong because I'd hate for someone to not enjoy it first before listening to how it ends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to ruin it, even though it's now 20 something years old.
Yeah, right.
It's just, there's some things that are still, you don't want to give away all the secrets. And, this one, it's, the secret sauce. You don't want to give that the 11 herbs and spices, pass that off, even though it's been a long time since that was first introduced. So the same thing happens here. It's like, it's so well crafted that it's like, just read it and enjoy, because it's worth that investment.
Right. Issue 2 was solid. Like I don't want to overpraise this, but I don't feel I am. If you haven't read Tom Strong, stop listening to us for a second, go read it, and then come back.
And we're
Okay.
back.
Are you back? What I liked about this too was later issues. They did some flashbacks like to World War II and to
Beginning of time,
earlier
even.
times, and they change the artist for those side stories, and we get art from Arthur Adams, we get art from Dave Gibbons, Jerry Ordway, and again, those are great artists. I didn't hate any of that
No.
forced art. I didn't
Yeah.
say, oh, this isn't Chris
You
Sprouse.
took us away from Chris Sprouse.
Right,
Why?
which is terrible. But Art Adams, Jerry Ordway, Dave Gibbons, you can't really go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, reuniting the creative team from The Watchmen. Yeah, it's easier to point out flaws.
Right, but I don't have a flaw in this story other than, if I have to nitpick, sometimes the lettering was a little weird for me.
Yeah, because there was a distinctive font that was given to absolutely everything. When people would talk, they had it. But then when they would speak the native tongue of the island, they came up with a creative font for that. And then even down to like when the Timmy Turbo character, there was a different font, and the robot had a different font, and the sentient ape King Solomon had a different font. So they all had, which in its own way kind of like it's a comic book equivalent of saying like, well, here's your accent. This is what your accent looks like in written form. And while that's great, to your point, it does become mildly confusing, especially with the modular man.
Yeah.
It was trying to replicate the fact that there's an echoing aspect of the talk. When the robot would talk, it had a very jumbled, and it was clever, but at the same point, any time that thing talked, it did it.
Right.
So it's like, oof.
Right, and that's such a small nitpick for me because it was still fun.
Still great,
It
yeah.
didn't take away from the story, and it was creative. So, like, if I had to find something wrong, that would have been it. But it annoyed me very, 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 very minutely. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it was like, yeah, it was the equivalent of having a slight breeze cross over you, where it's just like, it felt a little cooler than it probably should have.
issue 3, he fights Aztec dimensional travelers who are conquering other Earths, and that was great too. And it wasn't typical.
Yeah, different take on villains,
Right,
and
yeah.
because it's not like, oh, here's your classic aliens, here's your classic otherworldly beings. It's like, nope, it's something from our past and something knowable. But if you take something from our past, throw it into the future, and say that's actually from the future, then it's like, what kind of world is this? Topsy-turvy.
In issue 4, we go back to World War II, 1944-5 flashback. Great art by Arthur Adams. Sexy Nazis attacking Tom Strong. Hints at future plot line without saying too much, but you kind of like go, what? And then
Yep.
later on you go, whoa, that was it?
Again, the payoff.
Right, the little payoff. We haven't really discussed characters. What do you think about King Solomon as a
Well,
character?
yeah, I would have to say definitely the equivalent of a Sulu and Chekhov from the Star Trek. They're a necessity, but they aren't amongst the top three. There are no Bones, Spock, and Kirk.
Right.
He's a very secondary character and has moments where it is useful. It's, if the character was never in any of these issues, I think there wouldn't be any loss.
Yeah, I had that same thought. I see why he was trying to do something different with them, but if the character didn't exist, like you said, or it was replaced with a different character, I wouldn't have gone, oh, what they needed was this. It's my least favorite character, partially because of the way he speaks.
Very, very British with that. Hey, what? What?
Right. Morning, sir. Morning,
Yeah.
ma'am. And that,
Toodle pip.
yeah, I'm not sure why that choice was done.
Well, I think it goes back to, and I'm not saying this is it, but there's that, the Charlton Heston, dirty ape comment, and then having the extremely prim and proper British accent on this ape. The contrast, what would be in some cases considered a dirty animal or a filthy animal or whatever, and then to have the refinement and the dignification or whatever you want to call it of the British accent usually is reserved to having that prim and proper etiquette is just so, and everything is just, yeah, you could tell it was something that's like, okay, we're going to put them in there, and we're going to put them in the very first issue so that as we have ideas and as we can build this on this character, then, yeah, by all means, let's start to include the character. But to have right out of the gates, to see the absolute need, maybe there was a payoff 10, 15 issues down the road, that the character's engagement was a little bit more like, oh, that's why this character's in this series.
Yeah.
And that's something to strength of this book, this series, is that I kind of want to read more to see if there is something that's like, oh, the reason why the ape was there. I mean, there's a toss-away comment in the very first issue about like, hey, what do you think about bringing an intelligent life into, and it's like, oh, yeah, you want kids? It's like, oh, I was actually thinking of making a sentient ape.
Right, yeah.
Like kind of a
But
joke.
we could have kids too if you want.
But if we want, we could do that.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised they don't have more children, him and his wife, but I do like Tesla, his daughter.
It's amazing when you think about that term, the word Tesla, obviously, we're referencing the scientist, but
Yeah.
how that was kind of an obscure phrase, and now it's just so much in common vernacular that to have like, oh yeah, this character's name is Tesla. It's like car, and it's like, no. After the brilliant scientist,
Right, yeah.
you know.
And issue 5 was probably my favorite issue when he's sent back in time to fight the how do you pronounce it?
Yeah, I always just said Pangea.
Pangea and character.
Yeah.
Whole continent, of
Very
sentience.
sentient. Yep.
Just some great Jerry Ordway art and Chris Sprouse, of course. But
Got a little side story for you on Jerry Ordway. When I was working on a action figure toy line, we wanted to have some art done for it, and we wanted somebody who could draw comics, but this was a reissuing of an older toy line and updating it and so forth. And so we actually got a hold of Jerry Ordway to do the art for us because he has that classic art look.
yeah,
But it's very, very clean and very, like defined, and there's no mistaking. People's faces aren't formulaic. They're not the John Byrne of, is that Johnny Storm or is that Hank Pym or is that, Hawkeye? Who is that? I can't tell. It's a blonde-haired white man. I couldn't tell you unless there was a costume that went along with it. Or a word balloon that says, hey, I'm Johnny Storm.
Right.
Oh, okay, that's Johnny Storm. But, Ordway has a very distinctive look to his characters and his Superman and all the other characters he had done. And had a great opportunity. This guy is amongst the most friendly, nice, professional. We had lunch with him and just had a great conversation. And he was super accommodating, super nice to work with. An absolute pleasure, and still one of those like highlights of my career, having worked in toys and so forth for so long. But to have that opportunity to work with Jerry Ordway was really amazing.
yeah, that's cool. I met him at a convention. I got a original Superman sketch in my sketchbook from him.
Very nice.
I think it cost me like $20. Like, okay.
Oh yeah, for $20. Holy
But
crap!
yeah,
Yeah,
he was really nice and very personable and always smiling. You could tell you liked what he was doing.
yeah, and he appreciated fans,
Yeah.
and he was never one that was top tier. He was never going to, be the one artist that people were like, I've got to get everything he's ever done, and I'm going to, these are collector's items because he did it. Now, granted, he was there at the Death of Superman run, but he just an amazingly consistent artist, and he knew how to draw, and he could draw amazingly well. He definitely deserved to be on this title, doing, these comics, because it's like, yeah, Alan Moore, Jerry Ordway, Chris Sprouse, great combination.
Yeah, when I think of Superman, like with the Byrne era, Jerry Ordway and Dan Jurgens, certainly two other people that deserve creating that Superman later on after Byrne left to what I loved about him. And they did an excellent job. I know Dan Jurgens is still around, but I'm not sure what Jerry Ordway is doing recently.
Yeah, and this was even a little different Ordway than Ordway.
Yeah.
There's a lot of him channeling Frank Frazetta. If you look at the costuming and the look of the, bubble domed helmets, was definitely Frazetta inspired, in the plastic see-through, garb.
Yeah.
And she's wearing a bikini, and it's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense to travel back in time. It's like, okay, that's okay.
Right.
But
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
it feels Frazetta.
They're
in
only going to be
many,
there
many
an
ways.
hour, so
Yeah, true. Yep, and they're automatically being brought back. But
yeah.
again, Ordway and these flashbacks, because of the use of different artists, harkens it back to another era. Like, these are literally like they took a clip from an old issue and they put them into this new book. Like, oh, we're reprinting these older stories. So even when Art Adams, who phenomenal artist and doesn't draw enough, when he's doing his sequential pages, yeah, it doesn't look like something that would have come out of the World War II era. It doesn't have that feel. Like, the Dave Gibbons has that kind of feel of an older, back in the day art. Jerry Ordway, back in the day art. Rick Veitch, obviously, I mentioned that, with the Supreme, back in the day art. A lot of them all had that. Whereas Art Adams definitely has a more modern feel to it, but it's still, it's Art Adams.
Right.
You're just happy to see his stuff.
You forgive him for
Yeah, yeah, quite so.
so many artists that we grew up with that we recognize the names of and everything. Art Adams, Walt Simonson, all these great artists who are probably only a little older than us. I know Walt Simonson's probably in the 70s, but
Yeah, he's been around for ages.
right.
Super
It's
nice guy
just
too.
phenomenal artists. You think of the waves of artists before them even, they were getting their jobs in the 70s, and these streaks of artists that we think of prior to them, like Kurt Swan,
Oh man, yes.
and those, Gil Kane, I guess, was
Ross Andrew.
Ross Andrew, all those people. It's amazing that this comic book, these funny books, have acquired such individual and terrific artists throughout the years. We're pretty lucky. I mean, there's, for every Art Adams, there's I almost swore, there's a Bendisi type artist who no one liked, but all these names of these artists, you really wish they could draw forever. They, like us,
at their peak.
have only so much time.
Well, and then also, you wonder what is going on a personal level too, because the pay certainly wasn't there. If you wanted to have family, you wanted to have kids, you wanted to retire. What kind of retirement plan did DC Comics offer these artists?
Right.
There probably wasn't a whole lot. So it's sad, but you just wonder, how much of it is something where they have to find alternative means to survive.
Definitely listening to Slugfest, I'm learning a little bit more about stuff like that, what they offered them, and how much Neil Adams was helpful in trying to get people more pay, more insurance, and stuff like that, and how that all started.
A sad thing. I mean, you think about the Bill Fingers of the world. How many of those are out there that they'll never get the recognition for everything that they had done and all the things they had contributed. And
That's
it's like
the rise and
Superman.
fall of these comic creators just because they did a work for hire or, they
Yep,
just,
sold the rights as a kid without representation to actually
yeah,
understand what they were signing off on.
right. Or, but, they just didn't realize back then what an iconic figure the characters they're doing made. Like, you didn't have a clue. They're
No.
just, they're doing a paycheck to paycheck, and
Yeah.
just how iconic these characters became. And it's a shame you can't go back and go, $1 billion industry, Superman,
Yeah.
get more than $155 for,
Well, it wasn't called the optimism era. It was called
right.
the depression. So they were, doing whatever they could just to make a food on the plate, and they had a steady gig for a very long time.
Right. But I mean, you
They continued to draw it.
can say that for, people who sold states, or,
Yeah, the Louisiana Purchase.
right. I sold New York for $55 and a can of beans,
Yeah, something ridiculous like that.
But
To people who had no concept of what land ownership was,
Right.
and trying to kind of like, hee hee, gotcha on that one.
history's
Thanks
always
for
going to
getting that
screw you in the long run. But,
Yeah, very much so.
what you gonna do?
But there's also a level of just like, human dignity too. All the people who have contributed so much over the years. But at the same point, I will say that there's a difference between creating a thing and what people recognize now. And I say Deadpool is probably the biggest example
I
of
knew
that.
you were gonna say that.
Yeah, because what Liefeld, quote unquote, created, which is basically Slade Wilson of Deathstroke the Terminator, a complete and utter knockoff. And there's plenty of other podcasts that have gone over this better than what we could do. But, that he may have come up with the name and a look of the character, but that was not what people were drawn to. People were drawn to what is it Joe Kelly
Joe
and
Kelly,
Ed?
yeah, he created the breaking the fourth wall and the
Yeah,
jokester type.
the Merc with the Mouth came
Right.
about through
Yeah.
him.
And what does Joe Kelly get for Deadpool movies? What?
Not a dime.
Nothing. Yeah, Rob Liefeld, he stakes
Walking
his
around
whole
as if
claim
like,
around having
my
been the
gosh.
creator of Deadpool. And I like,
Yeah.
I listen to Rob Liefeld's podcast once in a while.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I respect him in some ways that he has been able to accomplish what he has by doing so little. And and so I respect that. Like he's made a name for himself
Yep.
by
Yep.
being hated and being opinionated, and that's his niche, and he's done a good job of it, and I'm sure he gets more money than he should. But yeah, really, Deadpool is Joe Kelly's reinventing of Deadpool.
Yeah. Yeah. There's characters that were complete throwaways.
Yeah.
And, Deadpool is obviously the most notable, but there's other ones where, like if I recall, wasn't Batman under potential like being dropped until the 66 TV show come out? And,
Yeah.
And then, Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams came back and reinvigorated him post that 66 camp show.
Yep. Slugfest talks about that for a little bit.
So there's a lot that can be said on both ends as far as reinventing characters or giving them breathing new life back into them. Because like again, Walt Simonson, you can't think of Thor without Walt Simonson's contributions to the character.
Right. Yep.
And all that stuff that Kirby and Lee had done, but Simonson came in and really reinvigorated that character, brought it back to being something of consequence. But, will Simonson get any sort of tip of the hat?
Right. Well, X-Men, Uncanny X-Men was getting canceled.
Oh, true. Yeah, because
And then-
all those issues were reprints.
Right. And then Neil Adams came in
Yeah.
and actually brought sales back up and everything like that. So there's always someone who can improve your line.
And that's, the creation of some of these characters, in this case, the Tom Strong, going back to that comic, it's just, this was such a great reinvention as well as a brand new. And I had an art history professor in college that was like, he had a few words that he hated. One was awesome. He said nothing can be awe-inspiring, and some of it. It's either always, it's so overwhelming that it inspires awe, but it can't also be underwhelming that it's only some of it is inspiring awe. So that he hated the word awesome, but then he also hated the new and improved, because it's like it can't be both. It can either be new, and then that means there was nothing that came before it because you completely reinvented it, or it's improved, meaning that you're taking something that had already been done and improving upon it. But because of marketing, new and improved were two trigger words. And so that's when everything became new and improved. But in this case with Tom Strong, I do feel that new and improved is valid because it is a new character, but it improves on classic tropes and makes it valid for today's audience as well as those who were fans of it back in the day. So it is improved over what was out there, but it's also new because it is, not what you've seen on the store, on the comic shelves at the time.
That's like repurposed story.
Yeah, yeah. And especially in this day and age now where everything is like, you got to recycle, reduce, reuse, recycle. Reusing and, in some ways recycling classic concepts.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to do a second part to this when we haven't really described what happened in the first part. We're going to have to praise issues 7 through 14 in a different way.
Or we could jump all the way to post Alan Moore and kind of see what happens. Does it still hold up outside of Alan Moore's connection? And I'm kind of curious to see what the story is, because they pulled in big hitters. Even I believe Ed Brubaker, one of my favorite writers, did a couple issues of Tom Strong, and Brian K. Vaughan of Why the Last Man, the comic, not the terrible TV show that got canceled instantly.
I haven't seen it.
But no one did. The comic was great, but they pulled
Was
in.
it though?
Well,
I had all the trades too, except for the last one. I strangely sold off all the trades before realizing there was only one more trade. To finish the series off. But I enjoyed it. I think I love the concept of it more than the actual where it went.
Yeah, it overstayed its welcome.
Yes.
And the payoff at the end was less than spectacular. I will say that, yeah, because
it's hard to wrap up stories sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, you should get Tom Strong. I can't recommend it enough.
Well, do you have a moment for some website that I found that had Tom Strong trivia?
All right, let's try it.
See how many of these things you can get.
It's only
through.
1 a.m. I'm at
so
my
this
prime.
is actually, I was going to say, this is going to be the right time to do a quiz.
Right.
Do you remember what you just read?
No,
I
pass.
don't remember my own name. So pass. These are things that you find on a house. You find them on a house. Okay, ready? So I'll go through only the questions that are within the amount of issues we've read. So there's not going to end at a solid number. It's just
Okay.
gonna be some random
No spoilers, right?
No.
I mean,
no. This is from a website called Fun Trivia, and it's called the Tom Strong Quiz.
awesome.
So it's quiz number 373,923. So if anybody wants to play it at home, they can find the quiz there and see how well they do. Okay, question number 1.
Okay.
Which artist co-created Tom Strong?
Chris Sprouse.
Bing, bing. You
Okay.
are correct, sir.
I was going to say, if you tell me I'm wrong, I'm screwed.
Yeah. Now, these are multiple choice, so if you do get to a
okay.
point where you can't figure out what it is, I can give you some names, and then you can kind of pick from those selections. So, but I'm going to see if you can get them without it. Who received his Strongmen of America membership in Tom Strong number 1?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm trying to remember if it's Tommy Turbo or Timmy Turbo. I'm pretty sure it's Timmy, though.
Bing, bing, bing. You are correct. It is Timmy Turbo.
All that alliteration,
And I don't think that character shows up in any of the other issues that we read.
Actually, I was going to ask you that, because it's such a great character, and they draw him a little different and stuff like that.
Yeah, and coincidentally, in this particular floppy issue, they had that letter column, and it had some sketches showing, Chris Sprouse's artwork for the characters and preliminary stuff, and it showed a sketch for that Timmy Turbo character in the very back. So I would have thought he would have had some more engagement. I think he only made this one appearance just to kind of help be used as a vehicle to introduce these characters.
It's and that's how great this Tom Strong series is. When we missed the opportunity of having Timmy Turbo in a future story, like he was just in one book, and I felt like, oh, this character
Yeah.
needs to be in more.
Yeah, is well developed, well defined, and you were eager to see more of them. On what island was Tom Strong born?
I'm trying not to look at my comics.
And don't Google either.
Right, yeah.
I
I
can give
know
you
it was
some
two
names.
words, and I know the first word is like Admiral Akbar, Turu, something like that. Like
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Akbar
Adabar.
Turu.
Yep, Adabar.
Oh,
Taru.
Adabar, yeah.
Yeah, Attaboy.
It's a trap.
Yeah, it's a true.
It's a Turu.
True. So, who is, and this is going to be me butchering the languages, but who is Dahlia or Dalua? I'll say Dalua.
Tom Strong's amazing wife.
Bing, bing, bing. You're batting a thousand. What does Tom call his home/headquarters?
I'm gonna go with the obvious one. I think it's the Stronghold.
Correct.
All right, yeah.
This one is going to throw you a little bit, so
Yep.
we'll see where you land on this particular one. What is the common exclamation among the Strong family?
Like they're up and
They're-
away kind of thing.
Yeah, or the Great Hera, or Great Caesar's Ghost, or
Strong power activate. Yeah,
let me know if you need the multiple choice option.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
you're gonna-
go multiple choice right away.
Okay. Yep. You're calling in your friend of
Yeah, I'm gonna
multiple
phone a
choice
friend.
So here's your four options: Great Scott, By Harmony, Millennium, or Chikalta. Chikalta.
I don't know any of those. It's not Great Scott.
By Harmony,
That's-
Millennium, or
It's
Chikalta.
not Millennium. I'll say the last one.
You are correct. Chikalta.
Whatever that means.
Fictional words,
Yep.
but it does fit in this universe. It's not so weird, but it does definitely fit. Moving on. What female enemy did Tom first meet on July 6, 1945?
Well, yes, he got a white rose from her, and then got gunned down in his stronghold by some aerial planes. I only remember her last name, which was Swice.
Yeah, I'll give
It's
it
not
to you.
Greta.
Nope, but it's very, very close. It's another stereotypical Ingrid.
Ingrid, that's right. Ingrid Swice. This very long, immortal, nearly invulnerable Nazi attractive woman.
Yep. She was basically created. That's how they phrased it. So there's an equivalent of Tom Strong, but in a different way.
Right.
Who is Tom's arch nemesis? And Tom's we're on a first name basis here.
Tom. Oh, it's Tom.
Who is
it?
Tom's arch nemesis?
Again, I only have the one name. I'm trying to think what.
I'll give it to you if you can give me that
It's
name.
Savine.
Yep. And the first name is probably amongst the most bland of possible options. Paul.
Paul.
Paul
Paul.
Sabine. Hey,
Okay, Paul Savine.
Yep, I'm a James Bond fan, and that was how that name came about. As much as people go like, yeah, James Bond, that's such a cool name. It's like, no, Ian Fleming pulled that name off of a book. It was like The Birds of the West Indies or something like that. I have a copy of that book, and the author of that book is like an Audubon type book, but it was a gentleman by the name of James Bond wrote that book, and that's where Ian Fleming got the name. Stole it off of an author who said that that name was so bland, it was a perfect name for a spy. And now everybody associates James Bond as being like, ooh, suave and debonair. I will offer this one, even though we haven't reached it, but I'll let you make a guess.
Chris
It
Sprouse.
says, which of the following did not write an issue of Tom Strong? So I'm going to give you the four names, and you have to make a choice.
Okay.
So Jeff Johns,
Okay.
Howard Chaykin, Brian K. Vaughan, or Ed Brubaker. Which one did not actually write a Tom Strong story?
I don't think Jeff Johns did.
Wonk wonk.
No, he did.
Nope. Yep.
Oh.
Apparently he did. Jeff Johns, the person who did not was a Howard Chaykin. It's as though that's a tough one because Howard Chaykin is a writer as well as an artist. He drew Electric Ladyland in issue 19, but he did not write it. Jeff Johns wrote issue 25, but I thought I'd throw that one in there. I thought that was interesting.
That's pretty good. I like that quiz.
Yeah. So
and-
you did well for the ones that we could get,
Yeah.
based off the first 6 or so issues.
And let me just say, issue 6 ends in a cliffhanger.
It
like
does
issue
get
5
resolved
did.
in 7.
It does get resolved in 7, but I don't know it because I haven't read 7 yet. So
You sounded
if
too much like
you
Lily.
have read Tom Strong and want to tell us how you like it or don't like it, let us know. We appreciate you downloading. We are on the Twitter if you want to contact us there. We are also on a Gmail. And this is why I love comics at gmail.com. Let's see, we have 2 episodes till our Christmas episode. We have a lot of laughs on that, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. That will end the year,
2021.
year 1, sort of,
Mhm.
but definitely a lot of good possibilities for next year. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up. I don't want to
Oh, yeah.
pinpoint anything. We're going to try to do some more independent stuff and even
Keep people
stuff.
guessing.
Yeah. I will include some of our calendar on our Facebook page, so definitely join us there. This is why I love comics podcast. Facebook. Our thanks to our German audience. You are growing, and we love you. Thanks again for listening. I am Andy,
This is Michael.
and we'll see you next time.
Toodle pip, as King Solomon would say.
As always, thanks to Thunder Chicken for letting me use their music. Go check them out on Spotify.
Down the road again. Just can't wait to read that comic, my friend.
There's a new theme music.